having an autoimmune disease screwing up your ability to make gains? Obviously, if you're watching this video, you've kind of moved past the perspective of just looking to be healthier or just trying to be active as somebody with Crohn's disease or IBD or some sort of autoimmune disease. But even if you are somebody who falls into that category of not really doing anything and trying to figure out if it's good for you to be active, this is still a great video for you. So let's jump right in. So as always, I've got my usual laptop in front of me to provide me with some notes. So if you see me looking down or kind of scrolling up and down, that's pretty much why. So here we go. As we know, exercise pretty much becomes something that is beneficial for just about everyone. We should exercise, regardless of your situation. Research is showing that exercise and some sort of physical movement and physical literacy is optimal for health. With that being said, those with an autoimmune disease, such as Crohn's disease, such as ankylosing spondylitis, or rheumatoid arthritis, if you're exercising at a degree that is too high for your body to actually control, because of the increased inflammation, ergo exercising actually causes an increase in inflammation through cell swelling and just general health of the muscle tissue itself, can lead to problems in terms of flare-ups for people with these autoimmune conditions. So essentially we're going to look at what does it mean to train and do so optimally. So essentially, I've made a video on overtraining and what my thoughts are on it, and I don't exactly think that overtraining is a real thing to a point that you're basically balls to the walls, beating yourself up, and all you want to do is sleep and kind of crash, burn out, and die. That's not really a thing that comes about with weight training per se, but maybe through cardiorespiratory training, you could be overtraining to a certain extent. But with that being said, those with autoimmune conditions, such as Crohn's disease in my case, I can attest to this, there are periods where I feel as though I am reaching a point of fatigue being higher than it should be. And that can be almost a misnomer to overtraining. So what do I mean by that? Essentially, being fatigued from having too many sets or too many reps or too high of an intensity or too much volume to a point that my body can't recover from it. So all I do is feel tired and desire sleep. So essentially finding a sweet spot where you're at a point where you're eliciting positive gains in terms of health adaptations and strength improvements, as well as muscular fiber hypertrophy, so obviously getting bigger and feeling better about yourself is the goal. But at a certain point in time, how do you do this? So the general perspective of just increasing volume, increasing intensity, and then decreasing volume to equate for that intensity isn't always enough for somebody who has Crohn's disease. Just because of the point of view that as you're increasing your volume, you're increasing inflammation. As you increase intensity, you're increasing inflammation. So for some people, it could be at an all-time high. So essentially, being able to monitor and self-regulate yourself, as well as auto-regulate your programming on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis or even cycle-to-cycle basis is needed. So in terms of training aids, we've briefly gone over training itself and how to make it better, but there's certain training aids that those with Crohn's disease don't exactly do well with. So we know through research that stuff such as caffeine, beta-alanine, and citrulline are supplements that can help aid with performance, either through cell swelling or delayed onset to fatigue itself. But by having this, it actually increases inflammation because of the advent of training harder. Through training harder, you're going to increase these physiological adaptations, which is what you want, but there might be a threshold level that you're exceeding each time, which might not be the most advantageous. And at the same time, for some people, stuff like caffeine, where it's just a diuretic, it might be more than just a diuretic for somebody with Crohn's disease. I can say for myself, when I have too much caffeine, it basically makes me have to go to the bathroom several times to take number 2 poops. So a specific example of that is typically my threshold limit with caffeine is about 350 milligrams, which is kind of like a scoop and a half of most standard pre-workouts. But this one pre-workout that I got has about 400 milligrams per scoop. So I've been playing with that, and almost every other workout I found that my stomach feels bloated, cramped, uncomfortable, I'm going to the bathroom more, it just feels generally not great. So this has been a defining factor to my workouts because I'm feeling worse and worse. And as a result, I'm training worse and worse at the gym, and I'm leaving more and more tired, and recovery is taking more and more time to essentially feel half decent. So, for example, in one workout recently, I basically took about 6 craps in about an hour and 10 minutes, and I went from feeling well ready to do this workout to I just want to go home and sleep and do nothing else whatsoever. And it was literally just from taking this pre-workout that had this 400 milligrams of caffeine. So essentially what I'm getting at is, for somebody who doesn't have these digestive problems, they have a quote-unquote normal stomach where they can just adapt and go with these supplements, they don't have to worry about this. But those with Crohn's disease, if you're looking to get that edge on your training through these supplements, which I'm not saying don't do, you have to find that sweet spot and recognize when and where to be causing problems. And then don't even get me started on post-workout supplements, stuff like designer carbohydrates or waxy maize, because, well, for the majority of people with Crohn's disease, they're corn-based, and if you want to spend more time in the bathroom than you already are, go for it and take it, but you're not going to be optimizing your gains. And I'm not saying don't take them just because they are essentially a supplement, but there's definitely better ways to go about it, such as eating whole foods. And finally, the last thing that I've kind of seen on some Crohn's and colitis forums and IBD forums is people talking about like general exercises that cause flare-ups. I'm not entirely sure if I see the link between the two, but there's people claiming that if they do certain exercises, it increases flare-ups, I guess like doing general crunches, but that could be just mistaken as spinal flexion and doing what the abdominal muscles are intended to do, and with them being underworked and overtraining them leads to a mimicking factor of a flare-up. But at the same point in time, if you're consistently doing an exercise incorrectly, for example, a deadlift, you're constantly having your back rounded in your low back, and that leads to low back pain. That is going to cause local inflammation to that site, which could lead to more inflammation in terms of actual Crohn's disease flare-up related stuff. So in that respect, indirectly, sure, but exercises itself causing flare-ups, no, I don't think that's very plausible. So essentially, what does this all mean? It's kind of been a pretty bleak breakdown of what it's like to train as somebody with Crohn's disease. So the best ways to kind of go about this is to manage your stress. If something outside the gym is bothering you, it's easier said than done, but try to reduce it or minimize it. Walk away when situations allow you to. Rather than being worked up over something, try to be a little bit more calm in situations instead of just being riled up over nothing. We already know that stress management is a big role for people with Crohn's disease, so do all that you can to manage your stress. Sleep more. The biggest thing that I see on the internet, especially Instagram, is people talking about grinding all the time and how they're sleeping for like 4 or 5 hours a night, 6 hours tops, and then they're just working as hard as they can on their craft. People with Crohn's disease, especially, and those with other autoimmune diseases, this is not smart. In fact, it's quite stupid. You're going to be doing yourself a disservice to whatever work you're doing, because you're not going to be all there focused mentally or physically, and your body is going to take a toll in the short and long term. You're going to feel like crap, literally and physically. So my recommendation is aim for 8 hours a night minimum. Not 8 hours a night maximum, aim for 8 hours a night minimum. So the next thing would be don't rely on supplements. Obviously, I know those with Crohn's disease, it's easier said than done to just not supplement or to take a supplement, because the diet that we typically consume is not very all-encompassing. So beyond taking a supplement for something that you're medically proven to be deficient in, don't go beyond that. So obviously stuff like protein powders, I would not claim that as a supplement. It's more of like a dietary aid at this point. Same with stuff like creatine, but to supplement with every little thing possible, like a testosterone booster or BCAAs or glutamine, stuff like that, it's just kind of overkill at a certain point in time. So try to get as much as you can from whole foods, and then stuff that's been proven to be medically low or proven to be healthy or non-harming for the GI tract, that's what I would be going with. Beyond that, you don't really need a ton. And the last thing is deload your workouts. So I've already talked about how overtraining and deloads are beneficial. I'm going to post the link to it again based on the icon above. But having prolonged periods of just constantly being at a high intensity and at high volume is going to wear you down. It's going to fatigue you. Being more fatigued is going to lead to more stressors. More stressors are going to lead to higher cortisol levels. Higher cortisol levels are going to lead to increased insulin resistance. Increased insulin resistance leads to more inflammation. More inflammation, more stress, more flare-ups. It's just kind of a big circular positive relationship of just constantly going around and causing pain. not positive relationship, sorry, a positive feedback loop. So what can you do when you feel awful? Don't try to train through the pain. Either take a day off or just go for a walk or train lightly, light cardio. You don't need to be going balls to the walls every single workout. Listen to what your body's saying. It's acting that way for a specific reason. Don't ignore it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got to say on this topic. Stay strong. I hope you found this video informative. As always, stay strong.